Solving the world's greatest problems is an audacious proposal. It seems prideful to even suggest the possibility of solving problems like human trafficking, poverty, or even sickness. But as followers of Jesus, shouldn't our outlook be different?
For centuries, God has called his people to push back the darkness with his light. This has led us to cure diseases, build hospitals, fight injustice, and care for the brokenhearted.
God moved the faithful widow Fabiola to establish the first hospital. He inspired the bishop of Caesarea to invent the first soup kitchen, homeless shelter, hospice, and orphanage.
爱人是我们的使命，但使命尚未完成。
At this very moment, faithful entrepreneurs, investors, and ministry leaders just like you are battling evil to bring heaven to earth each and every day. They're fighting for the glory of God and the flourishing of humanity.
They're pushing against the notion that we are comfortably cruising along in this world with only ourselves to worry about.
Vous résolvez des problèmes, vous négociez des accords, vous voyez des opportunités d'innovation et d'avancement avant même que beaucoup d'entre nous réalisent qu'il y a un besoin.
God wants to do more with you because he wants more for this world and his people.
And together, we can position enterprises to stand in the gaps of brokenness, make investments for both financial return and compounding impact, deploy philanthropic capital to accelerate ministries that focus on the ills humanity suffers.
Solving the world's greatest problems takes all of us together.
All of us together. God has entrusted us with much, and in return, much is asked of us.
Discover how the world's greatest problems can be solved in our lifetime. It's who you are, and it's what the world needs right now.
Last session, we learned from Greg Lernahan there's not enough charitable capital to solve the world's problems. And if we want to make a lasting impact, we need to not just dip into the giving bucket, but engage our investable capital. The trailer you just watched is about solving the world's greatest problems. This is both a ministry and a website designed specifically for faith-driven entrepreneurs and investors. This hub of information helps shine a light on these problems while also providing a tangible way to build, invest, and give together. We no longer live in a world where information is scarce. It's just the opposite. We get so paralyzed by the overload of info that we struggle to follow through on our good intentions. Our hope is to help you find simplicity on the other side of complexity, and that we can do far more together than we can ever accomplish apart. In addition to content to help you explore the different areas to get involved, Faith-Driven Investor will be forming communities around each of the 30+ problems listed on the website. The goal is to invite high-capacity leaders to build collaborations of giving, invest together, and discover ways to push back the darkness with God's light. On our site, you'll see that already incredible progress is being made by faith-driven entrepreneurs and investors. Human trafficking is one of the darker problems we continue to face. The attack on victims is appalling, while the sheer magnitude is startling. And yet, a group of investors are looking to build sustainable businesses while bringing light into the darkest corners of the world. Let's watch.
Warning. This video contains discussion of human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and child abuse. While not graphic, this content may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Most Americans are not aware that we are one of the largest markets for trafficking.
A lot of media has shown it, the movies have shown it occurring in other parts of the world.
We think of the movie Taken.
I will find you and I will kill you.
But we start to realize that this problem occurs in our backyards.
Boys and girls that have been abused and raped. And their images and videos have been captured, but nobody has been able to identify them. They're unknown. Until someone knows them, how could somebody rescue them?
The website Pornhub, featuring the sexual exploitation of children. Pornhub became my trafficker, a woman named Callie told me. Forced to appear on pornographic videos beginning when she was 9.
Pornhub is not a porn site, it's a crime scene.
And this bill really has one goal, to build a rescue team. Because there's so many frontline warriors and heroes, but there's just not enough.
We're talking about the darkest evil of modern humanity.
Every square inch of this planet is claimed by God and counterclaimed by Satan. As we wake up on a battlefield, then we act differently. Nobody writes stories about the people who preserve their safety on battlefields. We write stories about those who are willing to take risks. So there's a massive risk, and I think the biggest risk is that we would stand in front of Jesus and have not used all of our assets and have just had them all in the fight. The villain that we're oftentimes battling knows who they are and knows who they're going after.
Right now, around the world, nearly 50 million people are trapped in human trafficking, whether that's sex trafficking, labor, forced marriages, organ harvesting, or even ritualistic killing. You see, the world of human trafficking is over $150 billion annual business.
Unlike other illicit activity like weapons and drugs, a human being can be sold up to 20 times per day. And so the organized crime networks are seeing that this is incredibly lucrative, but like we said earlier, it doesn't just occur overseas, it happens in Florida, it happens in Texas, it happens in our backyards, in our communities.
Working at the FBI and being able to work and be in that space and see the magnitude. We don't have enough agents, we don't have enough police officers, we don't have enough to go in and police these dark regions of online worlds. And so we have a lot of unsupervised darkness that is happening. So when I look at it and I think through how children are getting taken aside, it is definitely the profitability of these industries.
That just kind of feeling like it was wrong wasn't enough. We had to take meaningful action. And we really came to the conclusion that for-profit companies play a meaningful role in combating human trafficking. It's actually nothing to the negative of all that the nonprofit and government work is doing. But when you've got the scale of the problem, when you've got over $250 billion turning over in the trading of people, we came to the conclusion that we really needed scalable solutions.
So we are fighting an economic problem. So how do we make money doing that? Well, there's a number of things. Everybody that participates in that chain of events has to have a way of taking a payment, of depositing those payments, of moving the girl back and forth to usually hotels or brothels. There's all kinds of everything from Airbnb to hotels, motels. There's a whole lot of businesses all involved and participating, in most cases completely unwittingly, in this entire process. And so economically, it's going after those businesses.
I cheer when you see that somebody took out a brothel. The police got together, they figured out this is a brothel, and they busted it and they shut it down. On average, that would be one of 20 locations that the local crime ring was running, and they'll open another one down the street in a few weeks. So did you really solve the problem if this is a 20 location crime syndicate that you just took out one location for 3 weeks? No, you didn't. You have to look at the entire whole and shut the entirety of it down. But if you look at them as an enterprise, they have a revenue line on one side and an expense line on the other. If we're able to push up the expense line, push up the expense line, and then pull down the demand at all, I can tell you what happens when a business has more expenses than revenue. It shuts down. That's how you decimate trafficking in our lifetime, is you take entire pockets of it and you make it unprofitable.
Many things boil down to the economics. We cannot fight trafficking if we're not producing income and returns. Otherwise, we run out of money.
So as I was transitioning out of the nonprofit world, part of the frustration was that most of my time was spent out fundraising and not actually doing the operations. And so going to school for business, I just saw an incredible inefficiency in that. And so I'm inspired by great technologists like Jobs and Musk and others that have used their skills to push humanity or technology further. And I always say that, we would never create a reusable rocket with charity. We have to have the wheels of capitalism and the proper incentives to drive industry to solve real-world problems.
And as we as a team at Eagle started to look into this wider problem of trafficking, we were blown away by both the scale and the proximity of the problem. And so that really culminated into us doing a series of investments over the last 7 years, where we were able to invest in companies that are actually live and breathe and were formed to combat human trafficking. And over the last couple of years came to a conviction that there were both the market dynamics and just enough deal flow to build an entire fund around combating human trafficking, which was the fruition of us launching the Eagle Freedom Fund.
But as far as I know, there's no other venture fund that focuses strictly on native impact of very specific problems where we know exactly now how that works. And we've had enough experience to say it works well. We're above average venture returns from our first fund, for example, of having started doing this several years ago. So it does work. So we want to go to where we know the market is, where there's a willingness to spend money in order to combat trafficking, either because of litigation pressure or fines or whatever the pressure is. That's what produces an economic opportunity to find a founder that has a solution that do exactly that, and basically then match that mission with what's going on in the battlefield.
So in 2024, we're seeing all of the incentives align when it comes to legislation, regulation, litigation, goodwill, and reputation. And so now industry is really aligned with the counter-trafficking movement, but they're entering into the phase where they don't necessarily have the tools or technology to fight back. And that's where Darkwatch and other technologies are filling that gap to give industry the tools that they need to fight back against human trafficking.
I think it was actually the entrepreneurs have, in some ways the entrepreneurs have shown us what was possible as we've met entrepreneur after entrepreneur that have massively scalable solutions. Whether it was Darkwatch that had said, I can find every one of these brothels and we can show the world how to debank them and how to shut them down, or whether it was Evidentity that said, I can find all these labor trafficking victims and we can map them up to those supply chains and you see their vision, or whether it's GameSafe who came and sat with us and said, hey, we can actually protect every kid in America and we can do it for $10 a month. Do you think parents would pay $10 a month to protect their kids? And we said, yes, absolutely. These are massively scalable visions. You have that conversation 30, 40, 50 times and you start to go, wow, there is an entire role for profit to play where we can, because there's so many aspects to this problem that each entrepreneur has their calling for their aspect of it.
And so the companies we invest in are doing something along that chain of events of keeping kids safe online, keeping them from entering into trafficking, all the way to the other end, which is rehabilitating people that have been rescued. And so there's business models at every step of the journey. And so there's all kinds of economic opportunities to fight economics with economics.
Part of the inspiration, right, is using the same wheels of capitalism and industry to create a counter-trafficking industry. And that's what, Eagle Venture Fund is doing so well, is that they're creating an industry to fight human trafficking.
We feel like we're on a mission with what we're doing with the Eagle Venture Fund across all of our funds. We have very specific goals for impact. And for me anyway, and I think I speak for my 3 general partners that are former military, it feels good to be on mission. It's kind of back to what we're used to and working hard to achieve those goals. And, being willing to write a blank check with your life.
As we look at stepping into risky big goals, like trying to solve human trafficking, and understand that yes, we're stepping into a lot of risk on behalf of the families of the entrepreneurs, and we're trying to solve really tough problems, that we also have to do it with a ton of skill. Just like when the military rolls into a really tough environment, you do it with a ton of practice and with a team that knows exactly what they're doing. It's taking risks that are worth it. I love Andy Crouch's Strong and Weak. He talks about this idea that taking really, really big risks with incredible authority, he defines that as human flourishing. in the same way to step in with significant risk on behalf of vulnerable people with a ton of skill, I think that could end up becoming the definition of what faith-driven investors say great investing is with authority taking risk on behalf of the vulnerable in a skillful way.
An inspiring and incredible story of entrepreneurs and investors coming together. For the past few decades, ministries have struggled to bring enough capital and sustainable solutions to the table to address these issues. This is one of those places where aid will never be enough on its own. It can certainly be a tremendous help to survivors, but to disrupt these maliciously intentional rings of evil, we need to deploy investable capital from families and institutions, and to do it with excellence. We need to get serious about bringing our best models to disrupt. I know there's so many emotions we're all wrestling through as we watch that story. You might be asking, for instance, is it okay to make money while solving the world's greatest problems? If we come to this from a posture of stewardship, if we understand that God indeed does own it all, we can change the conversation. And our focus moves to the virtuous cycles where more of this can be reinvested to tackle even bigger problems. It's one of the beautiful things about donor-advised funds. When you set them up, of course you can give from them, but when you partner with people like the National Christian Foundation or the Impact Foundation, you can use them to invest in companies and funds like what you saw here. When those investments bring a return, it puts more into that donor-advised fund to invest towards the next opportunity. To close our time together, I want you to hear from Tim Tebow. While you might know him as an athlete or sports commentator, he's also a faith-driven investor. I want you to hear how he personally is looking at this redefining of return. After we hear from Tim, it'll be time for you to talk with your group. Together you can process what it might look like to redefine the way we view capital that we've been entrusted to steward.
What's up, faith-driven investors? I'm Tim Tebow, and I'm so grateful to be with you today. You know, I know today we're talking about making money matter. Not just making money, but making money matter. And when I think about that, I can't help but think about ROI. And I know for all of you that are way more involved in all of these businesses, ROI is so important. But what if I reframed it just a little bit for today? What if it wasn't just ROI, return on investment? What if that ROI meant something a little different? What if it was return on impact? What if when we thought about, hey, what God has let us borrow for a moment, it wasn't just a return on investment, meaning I get to line my pockets a little bit more, but what if it was a return on impact, the impact that money made? And can I take it even one step further? What if that ROI was actually focused on rescuing of image bearers? What if that was our ROI? How different would the world be if just us today, we switched from the most important ROI not being a return on investment, but even more important being a return on impact, but most importantly, being a rescuing of image bearers. Because what happens when we believe in what Jesus did on the cross for us, we are rescued spiritually. And I want to add on to that, what if it was also rescuing people from trafficking or child exploitation or those that have been abandoned or thrown away or abused? But we put all of that mindset into the rescuing of image bearers. What if our lives were centered on ROI? But the ROI that was most important to us was a rescuing of image bearers. You know, as I mentioned, when we put our faith in Jesus, that He rescues us. You know, I know we get to talk about the gospel in so many different ways, and there's so many different ways that I love to talk about it, but probably my favorite way to talk about the life and the death and the burial and the resurrection and the ascension of Jesus Christ is as a rescue mission for you and for me. And once we put our faith in Him, that we have been rescued. But one of the things that I love to steal from my pastors and awesome pastors, he always says, but did you know that once you've been rescued, you're now on the rescue team?
what if we acted like we were on a rescue team? I don't just mean that with our nonprofit work. I don't just mean that around the world. I mean that in every sense of it. What if our finances, we thought about it as a rescue team? Oh my gosh, these finances right here, man, they could be used for rescuing of image bearers. Man, it could be a return on impact, not just a return on investment. What if our mindset shifted where that was oozing out of us, that we were on a rescue team? There's a few things that I believe are implied when you talk about a rescue team. Number one is urgency. When's the last time you heard of a rescue mission taking place in 5 years? You don't. Why? Because there's a sense of urgency. There's someone hurting, there's something that needs to be done. There's a plan that has to take place and we have to execute for the sake of that vulnerable person or the vulnerable people. We're on a rescue team, but what if there was an urgency with our finances? How could we urgently build that business? How could we urgently use these finances to move the needle for the sake of rescuing image bearers? Man, what if we did that? Well, you know, another thing that gets mentioned to me, Timmy, is, but you know, if I did that, there is a risk, right? There's a risk that you could lose it. But is there really? Is it really a risk when we leverage everything for the sake of image bearers in eternity and trying to fill up heaven? Is that really a risk? When we give it back to God, when we say, God, this isn't even really mine, it's yours, is that really a risk? Or is it actually maybe more wisdom? I can't tell you how many times I've thought it was a risk because I thought it was mine. I'm risking what's mine because I had the wrong heart posture, mindset, and narrative. It's not actually mine. So we love talking about stewardship. But a stewardship in the New Testament, the Greek word is oikonomia, and it just means someone that's put in charge of taking care of something. A steward is a house manager, a manager that's put in charge of taking care of it. And for us, we've just been put in charge for a time of caring for what God has put in our hands. It's finances, but it's so much more than that. It's relationships, it's resources, it's our time, it's everything. We are called to be stewards of all of it. One of my friends who is an incredible hero, and I don't say that lightly, he's someone that has served our country and fighting for our country and fighting to keep people safe and fighting to keep us safe. And he's been wounded so many times on the battlefield. He has blown up, he has been hurt, he has been put back together, and serving many of the world's most vulnerables, he got wounded again. And he is fighting right now to keep his leg. And I was on the phone with him not long ago, and we were talking and FaceTiming, and I was just saying, hey brother, man, I'm so sorry that they might have to amputate your leg. I'm so sorry. And I just want to say thank you for what you've done. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for putting it on the line for so many people. Man, I just want you to know I'm so grateful. And man, if you do lose your leg, I am so sorry. And he just looks at me and he said, oh, thank you, man. But honestly, it's not even mine. And man, if I do lose it, wouldn't this be a good reason to lose it for the sake of the most vulnerable? And I was just thinking, man, when I hung up with him and I literally had to go walk onto a stage and give a speech and I couldn't talk. And I was thinking, that's what stewardship looks like. How many days in my life am I so far away from that? Do I think, oh no, this is mine. All of this it's mine. I've earned it. I've worked for it. And it's not. It's borrowed for a time. And if God wants to take it, it's His anyways. But would I have the mindset to say, it's not even mine. Here you go, God. Use it for whatever you want. Use it for whatever you see fit, however you see fit, because it's not mine, it is yours. Last year we had the opportunity, me and my wife, to go to the city of Corinth and visiting Greece, and it was such an amazing trip. And One of the interesting things when the Bible comes to life is how much more profound it is. And I've always loved, 1 Corinthians, and Paul's writing to the church of Corinth. But one of the interesting things is that when Paul is using all of this competitive language, they would have understood it. You see, the city of Corinth would have been similar to like the South. They like competition. All right, they like sports. And one of the reasons is because about 9 miles away from Corinth is the city of Isthmia. And they had the Isthmian Games, which at that time would have been rivals to the Olympics. And people that would have trained, the athletes that would have trained for the Olympics, it's been reported that some would have trained so hard they would have died. It's been reported that some would have competed so hard they would have died. And this was a really big deal. People are giving everything for the sake of trying to win. We're told in 1 Corinthians 9:25 that everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to receive a crown that won't last, but we do it to receive a crown that will last forever. You see, one of the reasons why I feel like that is so important for us to understand that in context and culture is because when they would train their whole life, they would compete and they would win. Do you know what they would win? They would win a wreath. Do you know what the wreath was made out of? Celery or pine leaves. It's like, congratulations, you put your life on the line, you trained so hard, and for winning, we're gonna throw a salad on your face. Like, do you think about how silly that is? Like, think about it. Yet how often do we do that? How often do I do that? I give my greatest effort, energy, and focus to something that is already going bad. Could you imagine that thought? If you're one of these athletes and you compete so hard and they give you something that is already going bad. But how much of that is our lives? How much of that is my lives? My greatest effort, energy, focus, and determination has been for something that's already going bad. But what if we said, we're gonna change our mindset, our heart posture, and our vision around stewardship, and it's not just gonna be a return on investment or return on impact, but a rescuing of image bearers. Why? Because that doesn't go bad. That lasts forever in eternity. And if our mindset was on things that are gonna last, a crown that's gonna last forever, it would be on rescuing image bearers in every sense of the word. But would we do that in every way, shape, and form? I believe we can, and if we will, the impact won't just be here, it will be for eternity. And isn't that something that is worth investing in? I believe so. I believe we can make an impact right here, but more importantly, for eternity. Let's go do it.